Antonio Mwanza fires back. Zambians don't hate you, Mr. President HH. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of the InspirAfrica official. I'm Nakash. What a week it has been in Zambian politics. The temperature is rising, the stakes are higher than ever, and the nation finds itself at a critical crossroads. Today, we bring you a story that has sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Lusaka. A story of accusations, of victimhood, of a president who claims his people despise him, and of a fierce political voice who says, "No, Mr. President. You have it all wrong." Picture this: the highest office in the land, State House itself, transformed into a stage for self-pity. A head of state standing before cameras, declaring that the hatred against him is so strong, you can see it, you can even touch the venom. Imagine a president telling his nation that citizens who oppose his constitutional reforms are driven not by principle, but by pure, toxic hatred. That the church, civil society, ordinary Zambians, all of them consumed by animosity toward him because of where he was born. What happens when a leader wraps himself in the language of persecution? When criticism becomes, in his telling, not disagreement but bigotry. When every voice of dissent is painted with the brush of tribal hatred. And what happens when a political figure, a man who once defended that same president against trumped-up treason charges, now stands to say, "Enough. This narrative is dangerous. This rhetoric is dividing us." Who speaks truth to power when power cloaks itself in victimhood? Who dares to challenge a president's claim that an entire nation despises him? Who reminds the leader that the problem isn't hatred, but his own governance? The answer, viewers, came this week from Antonio Mwanza, president of the Democratic Progressive Party. In a scathing statement dated November 25, 2025, Mwanza fired back at President Hakainde Hichilema's inflammatory remarks with a clarity that has resonated across the nation. But here's what makes this moment so explosive, so heavy with historical weight. Mwanza didn't just criticize the president's words. He invoked a prophecy, a warning from the grave. The words of Zambia's founding father, Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda, who years before his death, in a quiet interview at his home, looked directly into the camera and spoke of one political leader he feared above all others, one man he believed would divide the country. That man, Hakainde Hichilema. Kaunda was right, Mwanza's statement begins, in bold letters that leave no room for ambiguity. Could the founding father have seen something the rest of us missed? Are we watching his warning come to life in real time? And what does it mean when the language of leadership shifts from uniting a nation to cataloging its hatred? The questions are urgent, viewers. The implications profound. Because this isn't just about one statement, one controversy, one political spat. This is about the soul of Zambia itself, about whether a nation built on the motto, "One Zambia, One Nation," can survive a presidency drowning in the rhetoric of division. Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation came to light on November 25, 2025, when Antonio Mwanza, leader of the Democratic Progressive Party, released a public statement that immediately dominated headlines across Zambian media. The context: an escalating national crisis over Constitutional Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2025. Let's establish the facts clearly, viewers. In May 2025, the Ministry of Justice published Bill 7 in the Government Gazette. The proposed constitutional amendments were sweeping, expanding Parliament from 156 to 211 elected members, introducing proportional representation, removing term limits for local government leaders, and overhauling electoral procedures. Almost immediately, opposition erupted. The Law Association of Zambia declared the bill lacked proper stakeholder engagement. The Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops condemned it. Civil society organizations mobilized. The Oasis Forum, a coalition including LAZ and the Catholic Church, began organizing protests, with plans for demonstrations on November 28. The Constitutional Court had already ruled in June 2025 that a previous version of Bill 7 was unconstitutional, citing failure to conduct wide public consultation, as required under Article 79 of the Constitution. The court's ruling was clear. Constitutional reforms must be people-driven, not imposed by the executive. But Bill 7 didn't die. The government revised it and signaled its intention to reintroduce it to Parliament. Then came President Hichilema's press conference and public addresses in late November 2025. In response to mounting criticism, the president made a series of statements that shocked many observers. He claimed that opposition to Bill 7 was fueled by hatred of him personally. He said the venom against him was so strong, you could see it, you could touch it. He suggested that those opposing the constitutional amendments, the church, civic organizations, ordinary citizens, were motivated by hatred of where he was born, implying tribal animosity from regions outside his southern province base. These weren't offhand remarks. The president repeated this narrative multiple times, characterizing dissent as personal vendetta, portraying himself as a victim of regional prejudice. That's when Antonio Mwanza struck back. On November 25th, he released his statement. The opening line referenced Dr. Kenneth Kanda's prophetic warning. Mwanza didn't mince words. The president's rhetoric was inflammatory, dangerous, and unbefitting of a head of state. Such inflammatory language is not only unnecessary, it is dangerous to our unity as a nation, Mwanza wrote. He pointed out that President Hichilema has chosen to characterize every form of criticism as hatred for where he was born, creating regional undertones and sowing divisions. The timing is critical. Zambia faces elections in 2026. The country has enjoyed decades of peace, avoiding the ethnic conflicts that have torn apart other African nations. But Mwanza and others fear the president's victimhood narrative could unravel that hard-won stability. Other voices quickly joined Mwanza. Charles Chanda, leader of the United Prosperous and Peaceful Zambia Party, urged the president to stop believing he is hated by Zambians. He argued that citizens aren't against constitutional amendments themselves. They're concerned about the rushed process and lack of consultation. Makibi Zulu, a Patriotic Front presidential aspirant and renowned constitutional lawyer, called for Bill 7's immediate withdrawal, describing it as unconstitutional and divisive. The controversy has also exposed divisions within Zambia's religious leadership. While the Catholic Church has been at the forefront of opposition, some evangelical leaders have called for restraint and dialogue. An 8-member consortium of civil society organizations even applied to join the legal case defending Bill 7, arguing that thousands of citizens participated in consultations and their voices deserve respect. Meanwhile, the Patriotic Front opposition party has hardened its stance. Parliamentary Affairs Chairperson Brian Mundable declared that PF MPs would not support Bill 7 under any circumstances. He made explosive allegations that some MPs were being offered up to 3 million kwacha and government contracts to back the bill, claims that added fuel to an already raging fire. Through all of this, Antonio Mwanza's statement stood out for its directness and its invocation of history. By beginning with, Kanda was right, Mwanza wasn't just criticizing current policy. He was suggesting that Zambia's founding father had foreseen this exact moment, this exact danger, years before. Direct evidence. Let's hear directly from the key figures in this controversy, viewers. Their own words reveal the depth of the divide. Antonio Mwanza's statement, released November 25, 2025, pulls no punches. The continued remarks by President Hakainde Hichilema alleging that Zambians hate him, and that the church, civic bodies, and citizens who oppose Constitutional Amendment Bill No. 7 are driven by venom and hatred, are deeply troubling and unbefitting of a head of state. Mwanza continued, such inflammatory language is not only unnecessary, it is dangerous to our unity as a nation. It is alarming that President Hichilema has chosen to characterize every form of criticism, disagreement, or civic objection as hatred for where he was born. This repeated narrative of victimhood is creating regional undertones and sowing divisions that Zambia cannot afford. Then came the historical invocation. Zambia's founding father, the late Dr. Kenneth David Kanda, warned that Mr. Hichilema would divide the country. Today, those words ring louder than ever. Mwanza's conclusion was direct. We urge President Hichilema to abandon the rhetoric of persecution and victimhood, and to focus instead on building national cohesion. Zambia has enjoyed decades of peace precisely because leaders, regardless of political differences, placed unity above personal sentiment. To understand the weight of this reference, we must return to Dr. Kanda's own words. In an interview conducted a few years before his death in June 2021, Zambia's founding father was asked about the current political landscape. The interviewer asked about moments that excited him during his 27-year presidency. Dr. Konda responded, "I think that my happiest point is that up to this point in time, as I have said already, I have not come across any man or woman in politics who is today thinking of splitting Zambia. Apart from this headman in Zimbabwe. Southern Province. What is he? This man in Southern Province. What is his name? The man running this party." The interviewer asked, "Magand?" Dr. Konda, No, this one from Southern Province." Interviewer, "He comes from Southern Province?" Dr. Konda, "Yes." Hakainde. Interviewer, "Hakainde Hichilema?" Dr. Konda, "Yes, Hakainde Hichilema, the one running this party, UPND." The video of this interview has resurfaced repeatedly during President Hichilema's term, each time sparking fierce debate about whether the Founding Fathers' fears were justified. Charles Chanda, leader of UPPZ, added his voice to the chorus calling on the president to reconsider his approach. It is important for the president to understand that people want to be part of these discussions. Zambians are not against the amendments themselves, but they are worried about how quickly the process is moving without listening to the voices of the people. The Law Association of Zambia, in its statement from June 2025, had already laid down the legal framework. It is LAZ's position that Constitution Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2025 lacks the broad-based stakeholder engagement and consensus required to deliver a legitimate and acceptable constitutional reform process. Unfortunately, because this bill has not benefited from the collective wisdom and input that inclusive consultation brings, some of the proposed amendments risk eroding the democratic foundations upon which our country is built. Archbishop Ignatius Chama of the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops was equally clear in his October 2025 statement. The Constitution amendment process should not be compromised by expedient political interests or procedural shortcuts. It is precisely for this reason that the Constitutional Court found that a constitutional amendment process cannot be initiated without the participation of the people of Zambia through wide consultations. The Opposition Patriotic Front, through its chairperson for Parliamentary Affairs, Brian Mundable, declared, "Bill 7 has already been rejected by Zambians and should not proceed. Those MPs who have allegedly accepted bribes to support it should return the money immediately. No patriotic Zambian would support a bill that was rejected before it even entered Parliament." One particularly striking voice came from Simon Mwanza, who wrote, "The truth is this. Zambia is not angry at his tribe. Zambia is frustrated with the way he has governed and made appointments in all strategic positions. Zambians rejected tribal politics in 2021. They refused to be divided. They refused leadership that only listened to one side. If the same mistakes are repeated today, the reaction from citizens will be the same." Mwanza continued, "The reality is that ordinary Zambians do not care about tribe. We work together, we intermarry, we trade. We live side by side without looking at anyone's village. It is only politicians who drag tribe into leadership and use it to shield themselves from criticism." These testimonies, viewers, paint a picture of a nation deeply concerned, not with where their president was born, but with how he is leading and how he is choosing to frame dissent. Deeper analysis. What we're witnessing, viewers, is not just a political controversy. It's a test of Zambia's democratic resilience and national identity. The broader implications are profound. First, there's the constitutional question. The Constitutional Court has already ruled that constitutional amendments require wide public consultation. The government's push to reintroduce Bill 7 despite that ruling raises fundamental questions about respect for judicial authority. If the executive branch can repeatedly attempt to pass amendments that courts have declared procedurally unconstitutional, what safeguards remain? Legal scholars and civil society organizations point to a pattern: the concentration of power through constitutional manipulation. Critics argue that Bill 7's provisions, particularly the proposed changes to how parliamentary vacancies are filled, would weaken democratic accountability by allowing political parties to replace elected MPs without by-elections. This shifts power from voters to party leadership. Then there's the tribal dimension, which Antonio Mwanza and others have emphasized. Zambia's success since independence has rested on its ability to avoid the ethnic conflicts that devastated neighbors like Rwanda, DRC, and even nearby Zimbabwe. The country's 73 tribes have coexisted under the One Zambia, One Nation motto that Dr. Konda championed. When a president frames policy disagreement as tribal hatred, he risks awakening dormant divisions. Political analysts note that opposition to Bill 7 comes from across Zambia's regions, not just from areas hostile to the president's southern province base. The Catholic Church, LAZ, and civil society organizations represent diverse constituencies. By characterizing their concerns as tribal vendetta, critics argue the president creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Makibi Zulu, the constitutional lawyer and PF presidential aspirant, put it this way: "We stand opposed to amendment. Bill number 7, not out of mere opposition to change, but out of a principled commitment to inclusive, lawful, and accountable reform." The question we must all ask is whether these changes will strengthen our democracy or concentrate power in the hands of a few, bypassing broad consensus and undermining the very safeguards we depend on. There's also the historical context that gives Mwanza's statement such resonance. Interestingly, Antonio Mwanza himself once defended President Hichilema. Back in August 2017, when Hichilema was arrested and charged with treason under the previous government, Mwanza, then with the Forum for Democracy and Development, spoke out forcefully. He called the charges trumped up and meant to eliminate Hichilema from the political scene. Mwanza said Hichilema didn't deserve the dehumanizing treatment and warned that those behind his incarceration would be held accountable. Fast forward to 2025, and that same Antonio Mwanza is now one of the president's harshest critics. What changed? Mwanza's supporters say he remains consistent, defending democracy and constitutional process, whether that means defending Hichilema against unjust persecution or criticizing him for divisive governance. Critics of Mwanza might argue political opportunism, but his detailed legal and constitutional arguments suggest deeper principles at work. The international dimension shouldn't be ignored either. Zambia has been held up as a beacon of democratic stability in southern Africa. The 2021 election that brought President Hichilema to power was praised globally as a peaceful democratic transition. International partners, particularly Western donors and the IMF, have invested heavily in Zambia's economic recovery. Constitutional crisis and ethnic tension could jeopardize that support. Some defenders of the president argue that his frustration is understandable. They point out that previous administrations amended the constitution during election years without facing similar opposition. President Hichilema himself has made this argument, citing constitutional changes under UNIP in 1991, MMD in 1996, and PF in 2016. An 8-member consortium of civil society organizations has backed Bill 7, arguing that thousands of citizens participated in consultations and their submissions deserve respect. Solomon Ngoma, acting consortium chairperson, accused Bill 7 opponents of selective participation and threatened counter-protests in support of the constitutional process. But this defense runs into a fundamental problem: the Constitutional Court's ruling. Regardless of what previous governments did, the court has established that current constitutional law requires wide consultation. Previous violations don't justify new ones. There's also a question of political calculation. With elections scheduled for 2026, why is the government pushing controversial constitutional changes now? Opposition figures like Mundable openly allege that Bill 7 is designed to tilt electoral advantages toward UPND strongholds in northwestern, western, and southern provinces. Whether or not that's true, the perception alone fuels suspicion. The church's role is particularly interesting. Zambia's Catholic bishops have been at the forefront of opposition, with Archbishop Chama warning that lawmakers should reject the bill until a truly inclusive process is undertaken. But evangelical leaders like Bishop Paul Mususu have urged restraint, asking those planning protests to consider developmental priorities. This split within religious leadership reflects broader national divisions. Perhaps most concerning is the allegation of MP bribery. Brian Mundable and others claim that some legislators have been offered up to 3 million kwacha to support Bill 7. If true, this would represent a profound corruption of the democratic process. Even if false, the fact that such allegations gain traction speaks to a crisis of trust in government institutions. Throughout all of this, Antonio Mwanza's invocation of Dr. Konda stands as a moral challenge. The Founding Fathers' legacy is complex. He presided over 27 years of one-party rule, but also peacefully handed over power in 1991 when he lost elections. His warning about Hichilema dividing the country takes on prophetic weight when viewed against the current rhetoric of tribal victimhood. The question for Zambia now is whether institutions are strong enough to channel these tensions peacefully. Will the courts continue to act as a check on executive power? Will Parliament maintain its independence? Or will alleged bribes and party discipline silence dissent? Will the Church's moral authority be enough to mobilize citizens without sparking violence? And at the heart of it all, will President Hichilema heed the calls to abandon victimhood rhetoric and embrace national unity? Or will the divisions deepen?